happy to find out where these two sit among those, and certainly appreciate the complexity of the transition you're describing.
Well, thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you for being here, and I'll get this over to you, and I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. I recognize Mr. Moulton for 5 minutes. You're recognized, Mr. Moulton.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Mr. Secretary, good to see you. Thank you very much for being here. The IIJA appropriated more money for investing in rail than ever before in our nation's history. Now, President Biden vowed to, quote, make sure that America has the cleanest, safest, and fastest rail system in the world. Will this indeed be the administration's legacy? How will you fulfill the administration's promise, the president's promise?
Well, thank you. We are enthusiastic about the opportunities here for passenger rail. As you know, in any other administration, I might count myself the biggest enthusiast, but I'll only ever be second place in this administration in terms of readiness and commitment to seeing America have the highest quality rail. As you mentioned, we've got unprecedented resources to work with here, the most since the inception of Amtrak itself. A lot of that is candidly dealing with backlog, dealing with the underinvestment that has happened in the past, but also opportunities for new high-speed rail in the U.S. And we think that seeing is believing. The sooner people can see successful high-speed rail deployed on American soil,
I've made this case for a long time. I completely agree with you. In the May appropriations hearing on the DOT budget, you said that through the IIJA, you hope to establish high-speed rail, quote, in at least 2 or 3 geographies. Have you identified those corridors yet?
So I can tell you that FRA has been in dialogue with a number of project sponsors or involved in some way in a number of high-speed projects. Certainly, of course, California, which has been discussed here, the Bright Line West vision, Dallas to Houston, those have all been on FRA's desk in some way or another. But of course, we're still early in the life of the deployment of the federal-state partnership dollars and other resources that could make a difference here, and I don't want to prejudice any upcoming applications.
Well, I understand, but we're not early in the administration's timeline here. These projects take some time, and I just want to emphasize that if this is going to be President Biden's legacy, if President Biden is going to be known as the father of developing rail in the United States, not the old-fashioned rail that we have, but high-speed rail that is truly the envy of the world and that a lot of Americans actually want to ride, then we've got to get cracking on identifying those corridors. Yesterday, dozens and dozens of flights were canceled on the Northeast Corridor, mine among them, because of a strange and unusual phenomenon called thunderstorms. The rest of the world would be able to get from Washington to Boston in 3 hours on a train every 20 minutes, with never a delay for weather. Not only are we not there, but we're moving in the wrong direction. In 2010, Amtrak proposed reducing travel times in the Northeast Corridor to 1 hour and 36 minutes from Washington to New York and 1 hour and 24 minutes from New York to Boston. Yet 7 years later, in 2017, trip time goals went up from 136 to 210 and from 124 to 245, almost 3 hours. Just a year later, they increased again to 229 and 308. So we're not only behind China and the rest of the world, but we're going in the wrong direction. I mean, at this rate, the goals Amtrak sets 10 years from now will be worse than how long it takes to travel that roller coaster ride on the Northeast Corridor today. So to meet the president's promise of the fastest trains in the world, we need a transformative investment, not just repairing an old line that is too slow by definition, by the way it was laid out in the 1830s, but actually building a new railway, the same way that we didn't just repair Route 1, we built 95. So how will you make that happen with the discretionary funds in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act?
So what I would say is with the dollars that we have for the Northeast Corridor, first there are some needs that need to be met in terms of safety and reliability for the long run. But where you really begin to start gaining minutes comes in a couple of ways. One is improving certain areas where there's, just because of the condition of the track, a need to slow down. But the other, to your point, where you see the most possibility for gain is actual realignment. That obviously brings a lot of complexity with it, but to meet the more aggressive and ambitious goals, we need to take the dollars as far as they will go in that direction. And I know that's what Amtrak's working on right now.
Well, let's make sure that we don't throw good money after bad. I mean, I think that's the key point here. If we're going to fulfill the president's promise of the fastest trains in the world, then they're not going to run on an old-fashioned Northeast Corridor. We can't just spread funds out to every state in the union. We've got to pick a couple of high-speed rail projects that will succeed, and so that Americans can see the value of high-speed rail, whether you live in California or the Northeast, or in Texas, or in the Southeast. You know, the most popular high-speed rail corridor in the world is about the same distance as Atlanta to Chicago. Think about all the cities in between Chicago and Atlanta that you could serve with 250-mile-per-hour service. It would be transformative for this country. Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
The gentleman's time has expired. I recognize Ms. Malotakis. You are recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank